Okay, cool. Should be live on YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, and then over here. And yeah.
Nice.
All right. Awesome. Great. Okay, so those of you that are just joining us over at LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, feel free to use the text chat to ask any questions or share what you're working on, and then I'll relay them to Brett for insight, feedback, advice. And yeah, we'll go from there. Brett, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Brett Lippel. I currently am a fractional chief um, growth officer. I was originally one of the uh, I led the international expansion for Enterprise Rent-A-Car into Canada and Europe, and then was one of the founders of TrueCar back in the day. And then after TrueCar, I had my own startup for 4 years that I sold, kind of broke even, and now I'm helping out some startups. So I love the startup world, the excitement of it, the energy. It's great. So happy to be here, Gary.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. You're always a wonderful mentor. And yeah, the amount of insights and experience that you can share with people is incredible. So
Thanks.
yeah, I see some more people have joined us. Again, use the text chat to ask any questions. I'll relay those to Brett and we'll get answers. Or if you're working on something, you don't have a question yet formed, just share what you got going on. I'm sure there's something that you may not be aware of that Brett can call attention to, and also build on that to share some stories, anecdotes, cool insights, feedback, advice. While we wait for some questions, Brett, I'm curious, having been through a lot at different stages, what
Yeah.
are like three core things that a founder should always be aware of at any stage of their business, from going from the moment they have an idea to something tangible in the market, all the way up to, like a true car going to exit, like throughout the entire life cycle? What are
Yeah.
three core things that are really important to always prioritize?
Yeah, that's a good question. One is to stay focused. 100% stay focused on your core. There's an old cliche: you can't boil the ocean. I think many times startups, and the famous word is pivot. How many times do you pivot? But staying focused, even if you do pivot, stay focused on what you're pivoting to. Try not to do too many things. You want to be known. People want to help startups out, but they want to be known for one thing. And if you're too complicated, it's hard for people to help you. The second thing is always be looking to raise money. I hate to say it, but most startups fail because they run out of money, and I see it that um, a lot of times founders don't want to give up equity, which not nobody does. But when you get people that are in this for equity only and not paid, you're getting what you paid for. So you always have to keep an eye on looking to raise money to get you to the next level. And then the third thing is the use of social media and getting your idea out there and networking. Letting people know what you're working on, letting people know what you've invented, getting an MVP, even if it's not paid for, is is exciting. And people, the one thing I would tell you is people are always pulling for startups. We're in a great country. We just got back from Europe, but we're entrepreneurial, and people want startups to succeed. And let your friends know, let your family know what you're working on, and they're all going to pull for you, and hopefully they'll help spread the word. So
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the reason why we do this is to help people build relationships with others around them. And, if even like in these types of situations where we get some people tuning in from all over the world right now, it's still an opportunity to put this into practice, reaching out to people, sharing what you got going on, ask for support, because like there's something common that I see in these communities all the time where people feel that they're not quite at a level that is worthy of sharing with someone else or asking
sure.
for support. And yeah, it's like echoing what you're saying, it's never too soon. Just start, like engaging with people and asking them for help and sharing what you got going on. We've got some questions coming in. um
Sure.
I'm gonna I'm terrible at the English language and I have speech impediment, so I'm going to do my best with your name, Ab. But Abdel Rahman, I hope that was correct, is asking, I have I have been discussing with my co-founder how to make pricing for our product yearly instead of people really want to pay a lifetime. Okay, so all right, so I'm gonna rephrase this.
Yeah.
So Ab is asking how to discuss with their co-founder to go from a lifetime one-time payment structure
Yep.
to a yearly pricing structure.
Sure.
And he also wants to add new features every month. So yeah, from your experience with pricing and sales, what are your thoughts on those lifetime deals that a lot of
Mhm.
early stage startups do?
Yep.
And what are like the pros and cons of that? Let's start there, and then we can build on that for Ab.
Yeah, you know, obviously it's great if you get people to sign up for lifetime, but that lifetime word to me kind of scares me in engaging with a startup. That scares me more than the price. If you said it's $99 for lifetime or it's $99 for a year, I would be more apt to do it for a year than lifetime because obviously the goal of startups is to grow the business and possibly sell, and you just don't know what the future is. And then it also locks you in. Famously, American Airlines did a deal years ago. Um, if you gave them $1 million, you get lifetime travel, and they had to pull that back. I think the only one still on it is the owner of the what's his name from the Dallas Mavericks. He continues to fly around the world on his $1 million, but lifetime, I just think, and I would do some focus groups. Lifetime, I think, scares people, and I think you can't be shy that you're a startup. You can't be shy that you're new, and I think people want to invest, and I think a year is probably the most you're going to be able to get out of, even if it's the same price. I think that mentality there helps, and it helps keep it open ended for you. So you could do after a year. Upgrade to a lifetime membership. But I would suggest probably keeping it a year.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot of what I've seen in, discussions with different mentors, especially the ones that are on the investor side or other CFOs like yourself, because of what you just said. It's a dangerous gamble to lock yourself into these terms for a lifetime when you don't yet know what your product is, what your service is, how that's going to evolve, what assumptions are correct or wrong, and what might be necessary to create a viable, sustainable business model. So it's really great insights that you just shared, and hopefully, this is helping Ab with how to address this with their co-founder.
Sure.
The idea of going, from lifetime to yearly, like you said, it's still like another like big jump to get someone locked in for a whole year, depending on like the service and what it is. That might be a tall ask too.
Yeah.
Um, what suggestions do you have when it comes to researching and strategizing, planning, and executing pricing for your company and building that into your business model? What kind of methodologies would you suggest for Ab and his co-founder?
Yeah, even thinking about it as we're talking, investors love recurring revenue, and whether it's monthly or semi-annually or annually, that recurring revenue, that automatic revenue coming in, is really powerful to investors. So I would suggest maybe doing monthly with automatic renewal, or maybe every 6 months with automatic renewal. Then you could call yourself recurring revenue. And again, those are very powerful words to investors.
From a financial standpoint, and I've seen this, come up before, but I'm curious your thoughts on this. Like from a financial standpoint with cash flow and P&L statements,
Yeah.
how or what are the pros and cons of having like monthly recurring revenue versus yearly?
Well, obviously, monthly they can cancel, right? And yearly is better, but it's probably a bit more expensive. As we said earlier, everybody's pulling for startups. Not everybody wants to invest or lock in. Um, and what do they get yearly as opposed to monthly? If it was every year, that would be great. I just, maybe you have different tiers for it and different pricing, which many companies do, and you can give a heck of a discount if it's automatically recurring revenue, and if it's evergreen that they're every year re-signing up. So, um, again, I would do an A/B test with annual revenue versus monthly, and really see. I think now, gosh, you see all these commercials that for the cell phone companies where they don't want to tie you up anymore. They'd love to tie you up for 3 years, but they're all saying it's month to month right now. So I think, whereas a society, we tend to our attention span is much shorter, and I think you might get more revenue on monthly. I mean, you're still going to have to perform every month, and it gives the person the right to cancel. But if your product is great and they like it, it might be easier to swallow on a month to month agreement.
Appreciate those insights for sure. Um, I want to go back to what you're talking about in regards to people, pulling for startups and wanting to, support you.
Yeah,
Um, when you're out there and you're trying to like build these relationships, and I see this all the time too, people go a little bit extreme with this where they're constantly in pitch mode and kind of acting obsessively about their startup and only talking about it. What
sure.
suggestions do you have in regards to finding that balance with not being obsessive, but having a
Yeah.
passion and letting people know about it?
Yeah, it's the age old problem. Are people, if you're too salesish, if you're too pushy, are you going to turn people off? I think you're right, Gary. I mean, if you're out networking and talking to people, instead of asking for investments or for products, the more you talk to, um, passion is usually what wins sales, and you can be passionate without really being a hardcore salesperson. Years ago, one of the best sales people I ever had wasn't a salesperson. He was a technology officer, and he just had the passion for it. And everybody that talked to said, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever." And he was our best salesman. So you want to get out there. There's a lot of books. You're networking just like you are for a job, just like you are, in the community. You want to talk to as many people as possible. And again, they want to help you, but sometimes it's better to see if you can help them first. What are you working on? Then this ask. Everybody is asking. When you network, you go to some of these events, and you have the people that network, and then you have the people that are trying to sell something, and you can definitely tell the difference. Just I would just get your elevator pitch. This is what I'm working on. I'm passionate about it. I'm excited. Um, you can't always ask for referrals. You can't always ask for the time. You got to make sure the time is right for it. As you know, Gary, we have these events, and there's certain people that are always showing up that are looking to raise money, and there's other people that I'm just passionate about this. And and the passion really draws a lot of people. If you look at Shark Tank, passion is huge on what gets them. Shark Tank is not real life sometimes, but the passion, you can definitely tell the passion really sells more than the product sometimes, because they're investing in you. Um, and a lot of times, and you can look at Shark Tank, they're not really selling their product. The passion is like, I've always wanted to do this. I'm going to do this no matter what, whether you invest in this or not. And passion is really what's going to take you to the next level.
Yeah, that's great insight and well said for sure. Building on Shark Tank, I too think that there are some really good lessons to take away from it, and a lot of it is not real life and stage. But what are some other aspects of watching Shark Tank that founders should pay attention to and they can take away as lessons to apply to what they're going to be, like doing with their journey, whether that's pitching or, networking or whatever it may be?
Yeah, it would be nice to see behind the scenes of Shark Tank. I've talked to some people that have been on there. Yeah, just give you a little bit of the history and what happens. Shark Tank, you're in a blue green room or whatever they call it for literally 3 days, and they call you at the last minute, so you got 20 minutes to go. Um, and obviously, they're in there sometimes for 3 hours, and we're only seeing 20% of it. And the biggest percent we see on TV is them negotiating, and that's really a small percent. My suggestion is, and they all say this, is know your numbers, know the marketplace. Data is the easiest sell. If you said there's 200,000 customers I'm going after, and they're all, here's where they're at. Also, I think sometimes people are on there and they're too early, and you can see it. That they have an idea, or they raise, they sold $50,000. I don't think it's ever too late, but I think sometimes it's too early to get in front of some of these big time investors. Also, they're looking at who else invested. Friends and family are great, but my mom's always going to invest in me. You got a mom, she's probably always going to invest in us, but who else is investing? And sometimes, even if it's 10 or 20 or $30,000, that you can get some CEOs to invest, or you can get some ex-founders to invest. That goes a long way, because they never really ask, well, how much is so and so investing? But if you said, I got so and so on my board and he invested in the company, that goes a long way. So yeah, nothing wrong with Shark Tank. It's entertaining and there's some great ideas. But what I would walk away with, being passionate, knowing your numbers, because not 90% of the time they're grilling you on the numbers, and you don't see that, because that's not too, you don't want to see a half hour of grilling through accounting. And know your marketplace. So that would be very important.
Again, great insights. And yeah, I also enjoy like hearing a little bit more of like, the background and what's going on. Like 3 days in a green room is gonna be torture as well. Although I have been in some green rooms and the refreshments are always great, but yeah, it's got to be like like rich person like prison is the way it sounds like to me, right? You got like some amenities, but you're just stuck.
But
uh,
don't forget, they
yeah,
don't, they don't, I think only 40 or 50% of the ones they agree to, they actually invest with, and then it takes 6 months to get the money, from what I hear. So it's great entertainment value. And for startups, you can see other people that are going through it, what you're going through. But as you said earlier, it's not the real world that much. So yeah.
yeah, that's also kind of like wild. So a couple of these things to hone in and more on is raising money too soon, being too soon for something. What are some other potential pitfalls or long-term problems that founders aren't aware of when they do rush to raise too soon from investors? And yeah, what advice would you give them to hopefully be aware of those pitfalls and avoid them?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a pitfall, but be prepared for a lot of no's. And even though people tell you, you're going to get one or two yeses out of all those no's, until you go through it. People are going to pick at you, and they're going to, and a lot of them, they're trying to help you. But be prepared for some very raw um, feedback. I've been told your idea is crazy, no one's going to buy it. Everything from, you're too old, why are you doing this? You're too corporate. So be prepared for the raw feedback. That's the first thing. The second thing is um, as much as you should always be looking to raise money, you do have to have some revenue. You do have to have people that are interested, because you can be, there. It's very rare. It's rare to raise money in a startup. It's even rare to raise money on an idea, especially if you're not proven. Gary, I sometimes introduce myself as, I've had a failed startup. A lot of investors want to see that you failed, and what have you learned from it. If you're somebody right out of school and have a great idea, and say, I want to raise $10 million because I got this great AI product. What is your history? What is your background? Who's going to buy it? What kind of, another massive thing that people say is, are you a solution looking for a problem? You hear that a lot in the startup world, and it's interesting. You go, God, that would be great, but if no one's buying it, even if it's helping people, or it's too early, in the environment to do it. Um, and the other thing I would say is when you are raising money or you are hiring people or you're getting people on the board, um, you really have to take a deep look in what do you want to gain from your startup. Are you doing this because you're passionate about it? You want to be your boss. So many startups that get invest. A lot of people do startups because they want to be their own boss. And then you raise money, and then somebody else is going to tell you, "Wait a second, you're doing with this with my money," or you get bought out, and they keep you on for 3 years because they like you and they need your talent. Um, Odds on you taking a startup all and the best or worst is going public, right? You go public and now you got shareholders to answer to. And I've seen startups really evolve from coming in hoodies and flip-flops to now you got to wear khakis, to now all of a sudden a company's bought you and you're wearing a suit and tie and you're like, wait, I didn't sign up for this. So uh, know that look at what the end game is. The other thing I can tell you is so many founders are so cheap when it comes to giving out equity. I mean, it, again, I always kind of look back on my startup experience, and I get called all the time. Hey, we'd love you to be on the board, but we want to give you 0.001% of the company. We don't have any money to pay you. You really got to look and see you get what you pay for. And it's really important that you look at some of that and see what is your ultimate goal, and that's important. So I would say, sorry, Gary, I would say when you're hiring people, I would give a little bit more equity because they need to have skin in the game and they're going to take it to the next level. And sometimes you're hiring people that you're not paying, and so you want them to win as well. So
No, yeah, it makes sense. Like all of that made sense. It, I want to go back to what you said earlier about being a failed founder,
yeah,
and this comes up a lot too. And I think the recurring theme around that is demonstrating aptitude, like you said, the lessons you've learned, right?
yeah,
What did you take away from that? And then also demonstrating two other things: your methodologies that you employ in how you learn and
yeah.
grow, but also your resiliency, right? Well, you failed before, and you're gonna try again. Like, right? There's some resiliency there, and when you put that forward that you're a failed founder and you are going to demonstrate those things, or maybe some other factors that I didn't touch on that you want to bring up.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, like, what's your process to doing that. What's like, for you, what's been like the most effective way to instill that trust and belief in you being able to accomplish this next thing, having
Yeah.
gone through these trials and tribulations before and having failed.
Yeah, one is obviously the experience you get. And again, most startups fail because of money. They run out of money. And you can run out of money because for numerous reasons. You invested too many, you hired too many people, you didn't get enough runway. But really, and I want to be careful when I say it. You don't want to go out and fail just so you can say you can fail. I mean, if you get hit out of the park the first time, that's as good, if not even better. But a lot of times, people have a couple of startups and so forth. So um, the one thing that I see is um, it's your money, and when it's your livelihood and you're passionate about it, good things are going to happen. And it's hard to explain, but you know I've seen guys that want to do startups and want to raise X amount and want to make $150,000 off the bat as a founder, and you really can't do that. Getting back to uh, uh, Shark Tank, probably we should do a search. The most said word is either ramen or macaroni and cheese, because they literally want you. I saw a guy once, and I should look it up. Said, I need to pay myself 200 grand, and they all immediately hit the no button. Have a nice day. Um, so, when you say that you're passionate and you're putting your whole life into something, um, again, people want you to succeed. And again, networking and talking to others and getting on calls like this or going networking is going to help you succeed because you're going to compare notes. And there's so many people out there going through what you're going through. There's a lot of networks. There's network events. There's a lot. There's Tech Coast Angels that you can go and talk to. There's a lot of people that are going through the same thing you are, and most founders love to share experiences. Say, hey, don't do this, or I'd even say don't talk to these guys for money because they will take you. They'll make you pay for 4 lunches, and then all of a sudden they'll ghost you. So getting out there and talking to as many people as you can. I would also say that getting a board of advisors or directors as soon as possible is very important, and getting people that know the business, that might have startup experience is really powerful. Having a board is so powerful because you can lean on them for all kinds of things.
Again, all wonderful insights and advice. What can you explain the differences between a board of advisors and board of directors, and which one kind of like makes more sense given the stage you're at with your business and its life cycle?
You know, that's a good question. Now, this is my opinion, so I just want to preface it by my opinion. I think they should all be board of directors. I think a board of advisors is nice and calling somebody up and having them there, but you really want to get skin in the game, and directors mean more that they have more equity and they have more skin in the game and they have a say in some of the direction, to an extent of where you're going. Um, Advisors are great and everybody, but you can get advice anywhere. I would say look at a good core board of directors, maybe two or three. You can always add to it, but look at people that are going to answer the call when you answer the phone when you call. They're going to have some skin in the game because they might have 2.5%, or in some instances, board of directors are paid. And I think that's going to be much more powerful. Most startups start with board of advisors, and then they go through them and all that. And again, you don't have to take everybody. You can interview. Take people that. I've seen it so much, especially when you get older and with a company, and it's like you're looking for private equity money, and these private equity companies come in and say, "Oh, we can help you," and we're so connected, and then they don't answer the phone after they invest in your company. So. Very similar to a board of directors. So get guys get people, that are really going to help take the company to the next level.
Yeah, yeah, no, again, that makes sense. And it's interesting to hear like, yeah, the distinction and how yeah, the directors carry more weight. Um I'm also curious, a lot of the recurring themes with these answers are touching on matchmaking,
Yep.
and taking the time to make sure that the investors are a good match, the advisors, the directors are a good match.
Yep.
What are like some of the key factors that you prioritize when you're assessing if someone's a good fit, a good match for a role, whatever that role may be, as part of like moving your company forward?
There's really two things you're looking for. You're looking for somebody else that might have gone through the startup world with you and is now and been successful, or you're looking at somebody that might be a specialist in your industry, um, and carries a lot of weight. When you look at board of directors in big companies, I mean, they're pretty powerful. You're seeing, CEOs of General Motors or, Kellogg's. There are a lot of people out there. A lot of my background is the automotive space, and there's a lot of people. Um, uh, Jamie Power, the son of JD Powers, was on my board. He was great, and a lot of people say, yeah, I can make some phone calls, I can get you in. So really, again, two things, and then I had some startup, people on my board that have been through it, not necessarily my industry, but have been through the startups and say, hey, here's some people that you could talk to raise money. Maybe you should try this and not this, or so forth. So and again, you can start off small. It could be three, and you can add to it. And it depends. I've seen companies pay board of directors $20,000 a year, and I've seen other boards that are giving just equity out. Um, Again, and it's hard to say this even when you're trying to raise money, but you get what you pay for, right? If you really want to get somebody to be involved, you're going to have to give them more equity and money if you can afford it. So it doesn't have to be a lot, but it has to be enough where they answer your call, and they can really and they really have skin in the game.
Yeah, I mean, like, for whatever role someone may be in, you need to be respectful and aware of what their needs are and what value is enough, like you're saying, to get them to prioritize you, right? And like part of that equation also is understanding what you're asking of them, because I've seen people that are looking for an advisor and they're offering, like, like your example is like 0.001%, but they want 4 hours a week from this person, and it's like, wait, that's a complete mismatch, and it's disrespectful. You're not taking the time to like practice empathy or compassion or like contextualize things in
Yeah,
regards to the give and take here. So yeah, this is
sure.
all really wonderful. Again, William Boyne, I'm glad you're joining us over here on Start Mata. For those that are joining in, cycling through on YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn, if you haven't heard me say this before, please share what you're working on. Ask any questions, post them in the text chat, and I'll relay them so Brett can answer them or provide some insights, feedback, advice for you. And
Yeah.
yeah, William Boyne, you know the drill. If you want to come on stage, raise your hand. Let me know in chat to bring you up, or you two can also use the text chat. So yeah, let's see here. Oh, here's an interesting question. So, uh, when you're giving out equity, equity's finite, right?
Yeah.
You only have 100%. How do you manage that equity from stage to stage as you're going from bootstrapped to early stage? Whether that's a seed round or maybe that um, Series A round to beyond as you're growing and growing and scaling up. How do you keep some sort of control in the sense of the equity that you have and you're giving out, not getting too distributed where you no longer have equity to utilize and leverage for your growth?
Sure. That's a good question. It's hard to predict. What I would suggest, obviously, some startups don't even have a cap table. You got to keep a cap table handy. You got to keep record of who you're giving stock out to, and you do need to have some sort of um, forecast or projections for the next 3 years. Everybody that I had projections, they said the minute you finish your projections are wrong, because but you need to have some sort of idea on how many people you're going to pay and how many people you need to bring on. Um, and that's the biggest part for a founder, right? A founder sometimes, I got a great idea. I'm going to start this, and if you need help, there's a lot of people, and I'm sure you could refer a lot of people. I could refer people that could help you with your projections. And so that will help with equity. A lot of times, your projections might include, okay, I'm gonna do a $500,000 seed round, and this is how I'm going to use it, and this is who's going to get equity, and obviously equity can be vested, and then maybe you put a chunk away, 10% for your board. You put a chunk away for your C-level employees, and then you put a chunk away for your existing employees. So, but that is something that you can't. You need to really take a deep breath and really analyze and put a lot of thought in it, because you start giving out equity here and there, it's going to water down the people. And again, if it's too if it's not enough for people, they're going to take it as an offense, but you can't take it back once you give it to them. So there's a fine line. This is where I would talk to uh, other mentors and ask them what they think. So
Yeah, no, it's something that comes up often, especially again with early stage founders,
yeah,
where they get a little bit too romanced in regards to the concept of being a startup founder and how anti corporate it is, and they're rebelling against anything that's corporate
yeah,
feeling, and documentation is a key part of that. and documenting your cap table and other aspects of your business is super important at any stage for any type of founder, any type of business. So it's really important to hear you say that. We got a question. I'll go back to this idea of documentation, but while Ducka over on Twitch is asking a question. So they say, we are a software company targeting enterprises still in the early stages without connections and not backed by Y Combinator or anything like that. How can we achieve our goals? In this case, is Y Combinator the right option to gain connections and evolve?
You know, it's I'm a, and I don't know if I'm answering the exact question, but I'm a big networking fan. You got to talk to as many people as possible. You do not know who is going to. The one thing that I think people really fail to do is when they get a no, they don't ask, well, who can you refer me to, right? And I've been there where I've just gotten chewed up, and they say I'm not going to invest, but you know, if you say, do you have anybody that might? Most people, again, they want to help you, and it might not be the first round of people that you're going to talk to. It might be the second round of, hey, you need to call this guy. He's in the automotive space, or this guy's in the SaaS space, or this guy has been selling to enterprise companies for many years. So again, getting back to originally, talk to everybody, talk to network, keep a good, it's interesting. You could create your own CRM, who you've talked to. You're going to probably talk to 200, 300 potential investors before it's said and done. And sometimes it might be a friend of a friend of a friend, here. And then also ask for a warm introduction. If you're there and he's, the guy's like, hey, listen, this is for me, but I know Frank, he's in the SaaS. Hey, you mind sending him an email and introducing me? That goes a long way than just knocking on the door. But networking is key. Go to events. There's all kinds of events that you can go to and get the word out there.
Yeah, and building on that, and it comes up a lot when we're talking with different mentors. And I think we've talked about this too, like the last time you did office hours, Brett. But
Yep.
the notion of networking, you want to build authentic relationships with these people. And one of the
Sure.
easiest ways to do that, especially at your stage, Wild Ducks, right? When you're very early and you're just trying to create those connections and evolve, like you're saying. And evolve in my mind is learning and growing, right? You got to test a lot of your early assumptions
Yep.
and see if you're on the right track. And a lot of that isn't about pitching, it's about reaching out to people as mentors without asking them to be your mentor, and just being like we're doing right here, right? We're
Yeah.
just sharing what we got going on. We're asking questions, right? Ask questions, seek advice, seek feedback, seek insights. This is a
Yeah.
great way to, yeah, develop these relationships in an authentic way. It makes it clear why these people are relevant to you, and they might be investors, but you're
Yeah.
making their background, their experience, their expertise, their field, their industry, right? They've put their time and energy into relevant to you being a good match for each other, right? And then doing these things and demonstrating that you're a hungry, passionate person looking to learn and grow is going to do what Brett's saying. It's going to endear you to these people where they want to see you succeed. They want to support you. You're someone that isn't being transactional like the majority of people reaching out to investors are, and even like, more typical just networking relationships, because everyone's, or a lot of these people, like, Brett has shared already, are in pitch mode, right?
Yeah.
If you're not like that, it's going to be different. So yeah, this is like a wonderful way to do exactly like Brett's saying. Yeah, if you got follow up questions, if you want to share what your software is focused on, what kind of enterprises, there might be some more nuggets that we can get out of Brett to help you out, Wild Ducka. And then yeah, some more people joining us over on uh, LinkedIn and YouTube. Same deal. If you're new, Kaylee, I saw you joined us over here on Start Mata. Feel free to use the text chat to share what we're working on, ask questions. If you're on Start Mata, Kaylee, like you are, Kaylee, sign up for an official account, and then you can come up on stage. You can use your microphone. Camera's optional if you want to interact that way. And Wild Ducka ads. So going viral to let people know what we're doing and cold email them and focus on letting them know exactly what we're doing, that might lead to potential investors. So in short, showing potential for these investors to earn money by investing in us. Um, I mean, Brett, you can add to this, but I'm gonna say no. That's kind of like the opposite of what we were just talking about here, where like again, if you're focused on essentially just cold emailing people and doing it in that way, that's going to come off more transactional and like you're just spamming people and cold pitching them
Yeah,
versus versus just reaching out and be like, hey, you invested in these types of companies, I'm working on this, I'd love to get your feedback on our business model, or something very specific that they're like if they're like Brett, whose background's in finance, you relate to their expertise, right? That's going to go a long way. And you don't try going viral. There's nothing to go viral really at this stage
yeah.
for you.
And maybe Gary, I'd love to maybe lead a second office hours just on networking, because networking is been my hobby. Um, Everything comes down to who you know and who you meet in this world. It's absolutely amazing. Um, Going viral, God, if it was that easy going viral, I think everybody would do it. And sometimes you go viral for the wrong reason, but that's not, if you're gonna get on the field, on the Dodger pitch, on the Dodger run on the Dodger field with your shirt on, about your company, some of that's not the best going viral. The best thing to do is to network. And when I say network, I can't say it enough. I have 3 kids. They're all looking for jobs, and they're all on LinkedIn all day going, oh, here's that. 5% of jobs get filled on LinkedIn. It's all who you know. I mean, just Google it. Um, if you go to events, be very focused in what you do. And because people want to help you, but if they don't know what you do, at the end of the day, they can't help you. And I walk away sometimes, and Gary, the lunches are great. There's certain people that I know exactly what they do, and other people I'm like, I've met them 3 times. I have no idea what that person does, but I want to help them. And so be very focused on what you're doing, what you're looking for. The problem us as entrepreneurs, we don't want to be focused because we want people to say, oh God, I might be able to help you here. It's like looking for a job. Some people don't want to say just sales because they can do operations, they can do finance, they can do that. Um, but when people put you in their imaginary Rolodex, and Rolodex is an old expression that you guys don't use anymore. But when people, especially in California, when people meet you, they really want to help you, and they're like, okay, what does he do or what does she do? How can I help them? And if you're like, listen, I'm selling SaaS. I'm selling SaaS to I don't know, to the automotive space. You know, a funny story is I was looking for a lawyer, and I had a friend that I'd met many times at events. I had no idea he was a labor lawyer until a friend of mine referred me back to him. And our kids went to school together. So be very focused on what you do. Get that out there. It's not even a 30-minute elevator, a 30-second elevator speech. It's a 10-second. If you're in a group of 20 people, you're looking to get one person or 2 people, and talk to them and say, hey, can I follow up? And follow up is big. There's a lot of people, startups that are passionate, and they feel, well, my product's going to sell itself because it's so awesome. I wish that was the case, but that is rare. I love saying that Google was a 10-year overnight success, right? Even though we swear by Google. And selling is not like I said, people get nervous about selling and raising money. All you're doing is being nice to people and being passionate about what you do, and be very focused, and they're going to want to help you. But follow up, keep a CRM, keep a spreadsheet. When you go to lunches, dinners, you meet somebody at a cocktail, follow up with them, send them a quick message. Hey, here's my contact information. And then ping them every couple of weeks or every month. And give them an update, because people love that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a couple again like gems that you just dropped. Like kind of working backwards, the updates. This is something that's really important. You want to keep people aware that you are resilient, you're focused, you're putting in the work, and that doesn't need to mean that you're being obsessive and working all the time, but you're being consistent, just the
Yes.
same, right? And you're showing them that you're making some progress, and any progress is still progress, right? And the other thing to kind of build on is 3 weeks to a month. That's a good like, gap between updates. Don't be the person that's updating them all the time, every day, every week. It's
Yeah.
too much. Yeah. So yeah, really good advice. Then yeah, the other aspect, or Wild Duck had just added, so clean focus pitching, not dark pitching, being smart while connecting with them, showcasing what we're working on, kind of like getting a work connection to get a job or something like that. Sounds clear
Yep.
enough. Thanks for that. Yes, and like Brett, like you were saying, you want to really come off as like a specialist in something, just like, like you're applying for work, right? My background's in photography. One of the first things I learned was, when I'm putting together a portfolio, make the portfolio seem like I'm a specialist in that field. So I shot concerts, I shot portraits, I shot product. I didn't want to mix those things up. In fact, I wanted separate websites for each one to really give off the impression that I'm a specialist in this field, and that's why you want to work with me, versus being a
Yeah.
generalist. And so this is like really important, like, Brett, that you brought this up. And so yeah, that same sort of real clear focus kind of introduction into what you're doing. And again, not from a way like you're pitching, but in a way of, here's what I'm about, here's how you can utilize me as a resource. I know about these things. This is my focus, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would say that the most personalized messages are the best, right? Getting I don't mind getting newsletter once a month, but that's not very personal, and there's no call to action, right? If it's an email that says, "Hey, Brett, we met at the 805 event 3 weeks ago. We just raised our first round, 100,000. Would love to pick your brain for 10 minutes." Or grab lunch or something like that. And it doesn't take a lot to do that. But follow up, follow up, follow up. It's amazing messages because I actually like to give help to startups, and how many I meet, and they're like, "Oh, I'll call you," and then I don't hear from them, or I have one meeting, and like my kid's getting a job. My son works on Capitol Hill, and he's looking for to upgrade his job, and I keep saying, you gotta follow up. People don't always walk away from the first meeting and are going to call you and go, "Hey, I got 100 grand I want to invest." Continue to follow, and it could be 6 months from now. And don't also. There's a great book. I was just on a call the other day. There's a great book called The Ultimate Question. Don't be afraid. We talked about this earlier. Ask me for referrals. Hey, if you don't know anybody, because some people are like, "Listen, Gary, I'd love to help you. Just don't know. Do you know anybody else in the space? Who can who else can I look through your LinkedIn, and can you introduce me to people?" That 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 I think LinkedIn is getting too much sales-ish right now, and I think people are a little hesitant. But it used to be a great way to say, "Hey, I want here's a friend of mine, Gary, that's got a great idea. Can I introduce you?" Um, uh, that is a great way to network.
Yeah. And again, like the biggest thing with LinkedIn and like all these other, like, channels, is that they're oversaturated now, in a large part because of AI tools just automating, these engagements and interactions and outreach in a way that, like, it was already absolutely obnoxious, but now it's like 100-fold worse.
Yeah,
But as we're talking about these things, the more personalized you are, the more authentic you are, the more focused you are in making it clear why this is a relevant match for you
yeah,
and them, and give them a reason to feel empowered through their ability to help you learn and grow, not, invest, not, do these other things first, is really
yeah,
important. It's going to be the way to stand out from so many other people that are bombarding them. But it also kind of plays into what, Brett, you're talking about, where, yeah, most of the people, if you were to be pitching, are going to be like, either you're too early because you don't yet have enough validation and traction, or you're too early because I don't yet know who you are, and I don't know what it's like to interact with you and work with you, and what that's going to bring, like what sort of relationship that's going to be, because an investor is a long-term relationship, right? So
yeah.
yeah, and that's why these updates are really important, and putting yourself in a position where again, you're endearing yourself to others, and they want to see you succeed. They want to see you, get support that you need, because they get a part of, or they kind of like, get to live through you vicariously, watching your journey, which is fun. Like,
Yeah.
most people enjoy stories, right? And watching how these characters develop and these other aspects of the plot lines develop. And you got to remember, like, that's what you're doing. You like, going back to the Shark Tank discussion, a
Yeah.
lot of what's being sold to the sharks is a story about the passion and how they're going to do this no matter what, and all these different elements. And what is the call to action there isn't give me money so I can make you a lot of money, because they can do that with anyone. It's give me a lot of money or give me money so I can make you a lot of money, but also involve you in the story. You can be a
Sure.
key character in this story, and it's going to
Yeah.
be fun, right? I mean, you can talk more on that if you'd like, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, everybody has a story. Absolutely, everybody has a reason why they did it, and those are pretty exciting, you know. And that's what people are going to remember more than anything, right? They're going to remember the story of, oh, I grew up in this area, and I always wanted to, you know, I always remember Farrell's. That's before your time again, Gary. You know, but it was an ice cream place, and then I wanted to reinvent it, and I asked all my friends, where do you go for a birthday party, and the stories are really the most exciting things that you can do, and again, you're not selling. People get this into this every day. I got to sell to everybody. If you're telling them a story, people get excited about it. Why are you here? I left my country, or I moved from the Midwest here because California is the biggest automotive space in the U.S. And I'm looking to roll out this AI product. So yeah, stories are really really, it really helps people remember. And also, I would tell you, I have this, on the 30-second elevator pitch. Have It's kind of interesting. I always say, have your mom do it. If your mom can tell all of her friends what you do, because sometimes we get so into the jargon. My mom has no idea what the word SaaS means. And if I said enterprise SaaS, she'd be like, what? But if I said I'm selling the software to automotive dealerships that help them sell cars, she understands that, right? So, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and so much of it was jargon and lingo from stuff that just was like, what is RPM, and you just got to keep it simple, because again, get back to, you're not selling and people want to help you, and the more you can keep it simple, the more they can remember you, even if you have to follow up 2 or 3 times. Most people do want to help you.
No, yeah, it's fantastic advice. It comes up a lot when we're doing the pitch workshops over here. Is, yeah, you want your story to be high level, easy to understand. Don't use jargon. Don't use terminology, especially acronyms that can mean anything. Especially for investors that are dealing with a lot of different industries or markets, right? Like, you don't want people to use their brain. The more
Yeah.
they have to use their brain, the more distracted they get from your story, your pitch, and the more likely they are to just stop paying attention, get lost or frustrated, or go down really unwelcome tangents that aren't going to help you
Sure.
persuade them, right? and
Yep.
and like you said, if you're able to tell tell a story that's easy for your mom, or like the way I phrase it is like like a 13-year-old kid, someone that's old enough to have enough lived experience to grasp concepts, but they don't know
Yeah.
everything, right? If either one of those types of people, like, if they get it, they can repeat it to other people, you're doing your
Yeah.
job, you're doing a great
Or
job.
If Michael Scott from The Office can explain what you do, you've won. So,
That's another good example. All right.
yeah.
Well, Duck has another question. We're coming up on time, so this might be the last one. Um, Another question. We're specialized in developer tools like UI components and systems, SDK, CLIs, etc. If we got backed by Y Combinator, Accelerator, or something like that, how can we keep equality, equity when we scale? How can we keep the mindset and goals, hence getting backed by most of the companies, change policies and goals to satisfy investors? So yeah, how it kind of touches on a question that we are going over earlier, but from like a procedural protocol standpoint, as much as spiritually, with the founders,
Sure.
what are the best ways to really kind of lock these things in place as again, you're going to take on new investments or get different backing from different, stakeholders.
This is probably the toughest question we've had in a while, right? Because no odds are nobody's done what you've done, right? Nobody's invented this. Um, you don't know what the future is, but you can have a plan and try and stick to it. But also the word change, right? I mean, the word pivot makes the hair on my neck stand up, but you hear that all the time. So whether it's equity or whether it's you really need to talk about this and have a plan. Now you can deviate from if you have no plan, that's the worst thing you can do. But you can have a plan, and then you can also deviate from it, right? This is what our goal is. It's so interesting. I talk to so many founders, and they have no idea. Well, I'd love to sell, or I'd love to go public, or I'd love to keep this, and you want to have that plan and try and stick. It doesn't mean you can't change it, right? But especially if you're hiring people and you're not paying them, and it's like, what are we doing tomorrow? I've seen so many companies pivot so often because they hear one person and they got to pivot. But I would say just have a plan and try. You can always change it, but have some sort of plan on paper, um, and try and stick to it because it's so much easier to talk about that when you have a plan.
Yeah, I this kind of goes back to something I want to bring up earlier. Documentation, again, like a lot of early stage founders with not as much experience are rebelling against their corporate backgrounds and experience and all that, and they don't want to do documentation, and sometimes, like you're saying, they don't have any plan at all, whether that's like documented or just in their mind. But can you give some of like like the critical uh I guess, consequences of not having documentation
Yeah.
of, different areas, whether that's like, finances or, a agreement between founders and conflict resolution or different things like that. Like you said, if you have a plan, you can alter that plan. But what are some of the consequences that, founders really need to be aware of by skipping some of these steps? And I also want to add, second part, how do they find that balance between documented like everything from their vision going forward 25 years to doing enough that they are going to benefit from?
Well, that's a good question. You can't over document. I can tell you that. So what I see is we'll deal with that. That would be a nice problem to have. Is what I hear all the time, right? If we're making a ton of money and we have to figure out equity, then that's a nice problem to have. Most of the fights I see and the lawsuits I see later with startups they aren't really startups is because they didn't document it. It was a handshake agreement, or you lawyers when you're starting. And there's a lot of lawyers that will do it for free and help you out as long as you pay for them. And Gary, I think you know some, and I know some. But you got if it's equity, if it's stock, if it's raising money, if it's anything that's going to change in the future or going to affect the company in a major way, you want to document it. Even pay, you want to document it. Well, pay a couple grand a month or whatever. It, it, most of the lawsuits that I see, or most of the disagreements or companies that break up, are because there just wasn't any documentation. You always hear it. Oh, they're going to give me 10% stock when they go public or when they get bought, and then all of a sudden you never got it in writing, and then they go, nah, I don't remember that. But yeah, documentation helps the future. I'm superstitious. Sometimes you don't want to jinx it and go, well, we need to figure this out and let's go pay a lawyer in case we end up being billionaires. But it's super important to get all that stuff ironed out early, and especially talking to a lawyer. And some of these guys can give you a lot of them can give you some templates to use for free. I got a lot of startup lawyers that'll say, here's some free templates. We're hoping that you'll use us in the future. But you got to start thinking down the line, and because one day that nice problem is going to face you, and it could be a big problem. So Gary, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Yeah, just, building on that, one of the the biggest benefits of documentation is just making it easier to communicate with each other, right? Like you're saying, it puts everything in front of everyone. It's in writing. Everyone has an opportunity to agree, be on the
Yeah,
same page with everything. But also, if there's something missing or not in agreement, well, you get to both work that out and hash it out. And you're doing it at the time when it matters, where you should
yeah,
be doing it, like, before you start moving forward together, whether that's employee, board of director, an investor, co-founder, whatever it is, like strategic partner, even like,
yeah,
a customer, right? Like all these things are going to not only protect you from a business standpoint, a transactional standpoint, but relationship as well, because the relationship is really what, in my opinion, is the most important aspect of all this. Being able to at least show the respect for someone else and yourself in defining what these boundaries are and responsibilities, roles, what everyone's, expectations are for themselves and each other. And that's going to hopefully give you the most likely outcome that's going to be beneficial to everyone, and something that, if things don't work out and you walk away from it, at least early on, why, and you're able to go, well, you know what, it seems like it wasn't a good match that we thought it was, and here's why. Well, that's okay. That's just the way it goes sometimes, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, what time is it? We're at 103. Brett, you've been amazing. This has been
Thank you.
wonderful. Wild Ducks. Uh, who else? Sorry, my brain. Ob. Others that have contributed, joined us. Thank you for being a part of this, for asking questions, getting some great answers and gems from Brett and his experience. Brett, do you have anything you want to share to the community? Anything going on? Anything you want to
No, anybody wants to LinkedIn me, happy to help. Happy to, do a call, and happy to help in any way. So yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, Brett's LinkedIn is on all of the event pages, so just go back to the event page and you can connect with him. Yeah, okay, fantastic. This is a wonderful office hours, and I'm looking forward to having you back, especially, yeah, if you want to get into networking, that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah,
Um,
love it.
yeah, for us, we got some other events coming up this week and more office hours throughout the month, and more mentors are being added all the time to the calendar. So keep an eye on things. Follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitch, go to the Starmada and sign up if you're in Southern California or California in general. Just trying to do what we can to make people more connected and supportive of each other. Essentially, what
Yeah.
Brett's been pushing for. So yeah, Brett, thank you so much again.
All right. Take care, everybody.